There are chapters of American history that many people have never heard about. Stories that were buried, ignored, or quietly removed from textbooks. Stories about rebellions, secret communities, and enslaved people who fought back against the system that tried to control them. Some of these stories were considered too dangerous to tell because they revealed something powerful. That enslaved people did not simply accept their fate. They resisted. They fought. And sometimes they terrified the very system that tried to silence them. Tonight we uncover several pieces of hidden Black history that many believed would remain forgotten. Welcome to Ashen Truths, where we uncover the darkest forgotten stories buried deep in history. Tonight's story explores hidden chapters of Black history that many believe were intentionally erased. The slave rebellion that shook New York. In 1712, the city of New York City was already an important trading center in the American colonies. But beneath the busy streets and growing buildings, a large enslaved population lived and worked throughout the city. Many enslaved Africans labored in homes, workshops, docks, and farms around the city. Life was harsh. Punishments were severe. And like enslaved people across the colonies, many dreamed of freedom. Then on a spring night in April 1712, something happened that shocked the entire colony. A group of enslaved men secretly gathered near the edge of the city. They had planned an attack. The rebels set fire to a building along a road outside the city. When white colonists rushed toward the flames to put out the fire, the rebels launched their ambush. Armed with knives, axes, and swords, they attacked the colonists who had come to investigate. The sudden violence created panic across the city. Within hours, militia forces were called out to hunt down the rebels. The uprising would later become known as the New York Slave Revolt of 1712. But the rebellion ended quickly. Most of the rebels were captured within days, and the punishment that followed was brutal. Several rebels were executed publicly. Some were burned alive. Others were hanged or broken on wheels. The authorities wanted to send a clear message. Rebellion would not be tolerated. But despite the harsh punishments, the uprising revealed something that frightened slave owners across the colonies. Even in a heavily controlled city like New York, enslaved people were willing to fight for their freedom. And this was only one of many hidden stories that history tried to forget. The secret city built by runaway slaves. Long before the American Civil War, there were places in North America where enslaved people escaped and built entirely new lives. These communities were often hidden deep in forests, swamps, or remote territories where slave catchers could not easily reach them. The people who lived in these settlements were known as Maroons, a term used throughout the Americas for escaped slaves who created independent communities. One of the most remarkable of these places existed in the wild swamps between Virginia and North Carolina. This region was known as the Great Dismal Swamp. To slave owners, the swamp was considered nearly impossible to survive in. The land was thick with water, mud, insects, and dangerous animals. But for escaped slaves, it became something else. A hiding place, a refuge, and eventually a hidden society. Beginning in the 1700s, enslaved men and women began fleeing into the swamp. Many of them were escaping brutal plantations in nearby regions. Once inside the swamp, slave catchers often refused to follow. The terrain was too dangerous. Over time, the escaped slaves began building small settlements deep inside the swamp. They constructed wooden cabins. They hunted animals for food. They planted crops in small clearings. And they developed their own communities far away from plantation control. Historians believe that hundreds of escaped slaves lived inside the Great Dismal Swamp at different times. Some remained hidden there for years, Others lived their entire lives in the swamp. These secret communities represented something powerful. They were places where formerly enslaved people could live freely, outside the reach of the system that had once controlled them. But stories like these rarely appeared in official histories, because they revealed a truth many slave owners preferred to hide, that enslaved people did not simply endure slavery. Many of them fought against it, and sometimes they escaped completely. The slave who won his freedom in court. In the year 1772, a legal battle began that would challenge the very idea of slavery within the United Kingdom. At the center of this battle was an enslaved man named James Somerset. Somerset had been purchased by a merchant named Charles Stuart in the American colonies. When Stuart traveled to London, he brought Somerset with him. For 2 years, Somerset worked as Stuart's enslaved servant in England. But in 1771, Somerset made a decision that would change history. He escaped. For several weeks, Somerset managed to live freely in London. But eventually, slave catchers hired by Stuart found him and captured him. Stuart planned to send Somerset to the Caribbean colony of Jamaica, where he would be sold and forced to work on a plantation. Somerset was placed aboard a ship that was preparing to leave England. But before the ship could depart, several abolitionists stepped forward to challenge Stuart's authority. They filed a legal petition demanding that Somerset be brought before a judge. The case quickly reached the courtroom of Lord Mansfield, the Chief Justice of the King's Bench. The question before the court was simple but explosive. Did English law allow slavery? After months of legal arguments, Lord Mansfield delivered his decision. He ruled that slavery had never been clearly established under English law. Because of this, Somerset could not be forced onto the ship and sold into slavery. Somerset was declared free. The ruling shocked slave owners throughout the British world. Although slavery continued in the colonies, the decision raised serious questions about the legality of slavery itself. For many people fighting against the slave trade, Somerset's case became a powerful symbol. It showed that even the law could be used to challenge the system of slavery. The slave army that terrified Louisiana. In the early 1800s, the plantations along the Mississippi River in Louisiana were among the most profitable slave regions in America. Large sugar plantations stretched for miles along the riverbanks. But beneath the wealth and success of these plantations, anger and frustration were growing among the enslaved population. Many enslaved workers in Louisiana had heard stories of revolution, especially the success of the Haitian Revolution, where enslaved people in the Caribbean had overthrown colonial rule. Those stories inspired hope, and eventually, rebellion. In January of 1811, a man named Charles Delons helped organize what would become the largest slave uprising in United States history. The rebellion began on a plantation near New Orleans. Late at night, a group of enslaved men attacked the plantation house and seized weapons. As they moved from one plantation to another, more enslaved workers joined them. Soon, nearly 500 men were marching along the river road. Some carried axes. Others carried knives and farm tools. A few had guns taken from plantation houses. Their goal was bold. They planned to march toward New Orleans and challenge the entire slave system in the region. Plantations burned behind them as they advanced. For slave owners across Louisiana, the rebellion created panic. Many believed the entire region could fall into chaos. But the rebellion did not last long. Local militias and soldiers quickly organized to stop the uprising. Within 2 days, the rebel army was defeated. The punishment that followed was extremely brutal. Many captured rebels were executed. Others were publicly displayed as warnings. Slave owners wanted to make sure such an uprising would never happen again. But the revolt of 1811 revealed something important. Even under extreme oppression, enslaved people continued to resist the system that controlled their lives. And their struggle became one of the most powerful stories of resistance in American history. The woman who led slaves to freedom. During the 1800s, thousands of enslaved people attempted to escape from the plantations of the American South. Many tried to travel north toward free states or Canada, but the journey was extremely dangerous. Slave catchers patrolled the roads. Rewards were offered for captured runaways, and anyone caught escaping could face brutal punishment. Yet despite these dangers, some individuals risked their lives to help others escape. One of the most remarkable among them was Harriet Tubman. Tubman had been born into slavery in Maryland around the year 1820. After suffering years of hardship and abuse, she finally escaped slavery in 1849. For many people, escaping slavery meant beginning a new life and never looking back. But Tubman made a very different decision. She chose to return. Again and again. Using a secret network known as the Underground Railroad, Tubman traveled through dangerous territory, guiding enslaved people toward freedom. She moved mostly at night. She used hidden routes through forests and small towns. And she relied on trusted allies who offered shelter and food along the way. Over time, Tubman helped guide dozens of enslaved people to freedom. Some historians believe the number may have been even higher. Because of her courage and determination, she became known as Moses, a reference to the biblical leader who guided his people out of bondage. Slave owners placed large rewards on her capture, but she was never caught. Her work became one of the most powerful examples of resistance against slavery in American history. And yet for many years, stories like hers were rarely taught in detail. They remained hidden chapters of history, stories of courage that challenged the system of slavery, the massacre history tried to hide. Not all hidden stories in American history come from the era of slavery. Some happened much later. One of the most shocking occurred in the city of Tulsa in 1921. At the time, Tulsa contained one of the most prosperous black communities in the United States. The neighborhood was known as Greenwood District. Because of its economic success, many people referred to it as Black Wall Street. The community was filled with successful businesses. There were banks, hotels, restaurants, newspapers, doctors' offices, movie theaters, and hundreds of homes owned by black families. But in May 1921, violence erupted. A false accusation against a young black man sparked tension between white and black residents. Soon, large mobs began gathering in the streets. What followed became one of the worst racial attacks in American history. Over the next 2 days, armed white mobs attacked the Greenwood District. Homes were burned, businesses were destroyed. Entire blocks were set on fire. Eyewitnesses later reported that airplanes even dropped incendiary devices from above. When the violence ended, much of Greenwood had been destroyed. Hundreds of people were believed to have been killed. Thousands of black residents were left homeless. For decades, the event was rarely discussed in textbooks or official histories. Many survivors were pressured to remain silent. The destruction of Black Wall Street became one of the darkest chapters in American history, and for many years it was almost completely erased from public memory. The history that refuses to disappear. The stories we explored tonight are only a small part of the many chapters of black history that were ignored or hidden for generations. From slave rebellions to secret communities built by escaped slaves. to individuals who fought against slavery in courts, plantations, and underground networks. These stories reveal something powerful. Black history is filled with acts of resistance, courage, and determination. Even when powerful systems tried to silence those stories, they survived. And today, historians continue working to uncover and share them. History is not always what we were taught in school. Some stories were forgotten, some were buried, and some were deliberately erased. Here on Ashen Truths, we uncover the hidden chapters of history that many people have never heard before. If you found this story powerful, make sure to subscribe to Ashen Truths, like the video, and share your thoughts in the comments. Which hidden story shocked you the most? Let us know below. And until the next story, thank you for watching.